Being here tonight with us, it is my great pleasure to announce that the 2009 McLane Leadership in Business Award is presented to Chuck Norris tonight. Chuck is a famed martial arts legend, actor, writer, humanitarian, philanthropist, and the list goes on and on. So the foundation is really pleased. I know Drayton McLane is very pleased that we're able to do this honor for Chuck tonight. And we're also very delighted that Gina, his lovely wife, can be with us here tonight. Before we start tonight's program, I'd like to make a few acknowledgments. First of all, I'd like to thank Drayton and Elizabeth McLane for endowing this program and making this evening possible. I know Elizabeth is here and Drayton's backstage, so thank you very much, Elizabeth and Drayton. I also would like to acknowledge the Bryan College Station Chamber of Commerce and Compass Bank for supporting tonight's program and being partners with the foundation in making this evening possible. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Norris will speak for about 20 to 30 minutes after the presentation of the award by the President. Following Mr. Norris's presentation, he will take questions from the audience. Those of you who would like to pose questions to our guests can do so by using the microphones that are in the center aisles. And please make your questions to the point so we can get as many questioners to the microphones as possible. Due to the great appeal of tonight's program, we do have a number of our guests that are in the adjoining auditorium. I would ask those guests that are viewing tonight's proceedings on closed circuit TV there to please remain seated after the event, because the President and Mr. Norris will come and answer a few questions and visit with you also. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to call upon that other great legend, the 41st President of the United States, George Bush. Oh, there you are. Great, thank you. Thank you all very much. Well, welcome everybody. I couldn't be happier with our friends of the George Bush Library Foundation, indeed all of you tonight, for the presentation of an award bearing the name of one very good friend to yet another good friend. And when it comes to Chuck Norris, I have to be honest that I used to think Chuck had been a success at just about everything he's done. Then I was reminded that Chuck is a martial arts legend who's a 6-time undefeated world professional karate champion, an 8-degree black belt grandmaster. And after I was told that, I changed my mind and now think Chuck is a total success at absolutely everything he's ever done. I want to welcome our President, Elsa Morano, the President of Texas A&M University over here. Elsa, stand up now so they can see you. I'm very proud of her and what she's doing for our school. Entrepreneur, humanitarian, globally recognized actor, best-selling author. Like Drayton McLane, Chuck Norris understands a thing or two about the American dream. He's got a wonderful story, personal story, hard work and leadership. As a martial arts instructor and advocate, Chuck created a Kickstart program that focuses on character building and life skills development in youth. And since its inception in 1990, I'm told that Kickstart has positively impacted more than 60,000 young people, and many of the students have gone on to attend college. Of course, as many of us know, Chuck has starred in the CBS television series Walker, Texas Rangers for 8 seasons, as well as his role in films such as Delta Force, Missing in Action, Lone Wolf, McQuaid, and Sidekicks. I'm sure you'll have a quiz on all those in a bit. But what many of you may not know is that Chuck served our country as an airman first class in the United States Air Force and has since then devoted a great amount of time to visiting hospitalized and active troops. He's been wonderful at that. His service as spokesman for the U.S. Veterans Administration, for example, helped make sure that our veterans had a voice in the public square. And in 2007, he was made an honorary member of the United States Marine Corps in recognition of his visits to Iraq. So when Chuck put out Black Belt Patriotism, How to Reawaken America, he was speaking from a position of someone who's done his part and given something back and understands a little bit about what makes this wonderful country tick. Perhaps just as important, Chuck was but a few of the brave souls who parachuted with me right here at our library back in 2004 to mark my 80th birthday. So he's already soared to great heights right here on Aggie soil. And I know you join me in welcoming him and his beautiful Gina, his wife, here tonight. Chuck, come on out. Now, I want to now call. I'd like to call Drayton McLane, as well as Teddy Ellison of the Bryan College Station Chamber and Joe Bray of Compass Bank to the stage to help me present the hardware. Where are you guys?
Here they come.
Let me just say while we're doing this, let me say how grateful we are to Drayton and these other partners for making this event possible. They've done a fantastic job. Drayton helps us in so many ways at the Bush School, at the Library Foundation, and everything else. And here they are. Now we're going to make a picture with tonight's honoree, and we go to the pedestal and then go to a seat, it says, so I'll be doing that.
Do you want your cane, sir?
Presentation. Drayton, you're going.
No, that's okay.
Drop it.
You want your cane?
Yeah, that better.
Okay. You get on the other side there, sir.
Other side?
Mm-hmm. While they're lining up, let me read what the citation states on the award for Mr. Norris. The McLane Leadership in Business Award is presented to Chuck Norris for his exemplary achievements as a martial arts legend, entrepreneur, and humanitarian. Mr. Norris has distinguished himself by his service to our nation's youth, as demonstrated in his Kickstart program, which aims to provide positive influences and role models for students. Mr. Norris's successful acting career and entrepreneurial spirit have added to our country's economic strength, and his patriotism and activities as a concerned citizen have reinforced the strong values of our communities while serving as an inspiration to all Americans. Congratulations, Chuck.
Good, I've got a chair. You know, I'm not very good at scripted speeches. Yeah. As Drayton McLane and I were talking earlier, said, you know, we're not good at scripted speeches. We just like to talk from the heart, and that's what I'd like to do tonight. And you know, it's what an honor, you know, for me to receive this incredible, prestigious award, the Drayton McLane Award for Leadership in Business. Because when you hear my backstory, you'll understand why I'm saying that, why it's pretty extraordinary for me. Because I started my life in the 40s. I was born on March 10th, 1940 in Oklahoma. And I grew up in poverty. With a mom. My father was an alcoholic and philanderer, so he was very seldom in my life. So my mom had to carry the burden of being both. But unfortunately, not having a male role model in my life, I grew up extremely shy and introverted and non-athletic. People say, oh, come on, but it's true. I never played sports in school. I never got in front of a class all the way through high school. You know, when the teacher would say for me to come up and give a book report, I'd just shake my head no, because I was afraid I'd get embarrassed. Of course, my face is turning beet red in my chair as I'm sitting there, so I'm getting just as embarrassed as if I would have gotten up, but I just didn't have the courage to get up in front of a class and talk. And then right out of high school, I joined the military, and I was sent to Korea. And in Korea was my first introduction to the martial arts. And the only thing I knew back in 1960 was judo. I never heard of anything else. Judo was the only thing I'd ever heard of. So I enrolled in a judo class on the base. And about 2 weeks into my training, I broke my shoulder. So now I've got my arm in a sling and I can't train. And so I take a walk out into the village of Osan, Korea. And as I'm walking through the village sightseeing, I look up on this knoll and I see these heads popping up on the other side of the knoll. I go, what the heck is going on? So I walk up there and I look down and here's these Koreans jumping up in the air doing these spinning kicks and all that. And I go, holy mackerel, I didn't think the human body could do something like that. But I'm watching them and I'm mesmerized. And I wanted to go down and ask them what it was, but they looked pretty mean. So I was a little bit nervous to go down and talk to them. So I went back to the base and I asked my judo instructor. I said, "What is it they're doing out in the village there? All these kicks and all this stuff here." So in 1960 it was called Tongsudo. Now it's called Taekwondo. And so I said, "Golly, I'd sure like to take that." And he said, "Well, I'll introduce you to the instructor." So he took me out there. I met the instructor, and I started training with my one good arm, for a few weeks. And then once my arm healed, then I trained Monday through Saturday in Tongsudo, and then on Sundays I'd train in Judo. And when I left Korea, I was a black belt in Tongsudo and a brown belt in Judo. Now I come back. I'm 21 years old. I'm stationed at Marsh Air Force Base in Riverside, California. And so I'm working out on the base there, and people are seeing this. Again, no one's familiar with this kind of a martial art. And they're saying, "What is this here?" And I said, so I tell them about it. And they said, "Well, we'd like to take that. Would you teach us?" And so I decided to give a demonstration on the base. And I'm thinking, now, if I give a demonstration, that means I've got to give a talk. So I said, okay. So I write out about a half a page speech. And I memorized the speech for 2 weeks. I've got listening to it on tape, and I could say it forwards, backwards, sideways, any direction you wanted. So now this was 1961, and it reminds me of like yesterday, And I go into the gym. There's like 500 people there. And I walk up to the microphone that's laying on the floor. I'll never forget that. I pick up the microphone, and I say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chuck Norris, and I'd like to welcome you here tonight." That's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember is I'm walking out into the middle of the gym to do my demonstration. And I'm saying, did I finish my speech, or did I just lay the microphone down? To this day, I don't know. But, the key thing when I'm talking to young people, the key thing here is that I cracked that egg of insecurity that I had carried around for 21 years. And then I kept forcing myself to get up and talk, and eventually I was able to crack that egg open. But by nature, I'm still shy by nature. And so, I have to, a lot of people are naturally gifted at speaking. And so it's no trouble for them. For me, it's a major stumbling block for me. But I know how important it is to be able to assert yourself. If you don't, you're not going to succeed. And so I realized that, and so I kept doing it. And then I got out of the service, and I started teaching the martial arts. And so again, the martial arts is still relatively new here in the States. And I'm thinking, well, how can I get students in my school? So I thought, well, I'll become a fighter. So my motivation to become a fighter was to get students in my school to teach. So I thought, okay, my goal is to win a local tournament. If I can win a local tournament, maybe I can get my name in the local paper and in the martial art magazines and get my name out there to try to get students. So that was my motivation to become a competitor. My first tournament was in Salt Lake City, Utah. I take 3 of my students and myself. We drive 16 hours to get to Salt Lake City to compete in this tournament. So all 4 of us fight. My 3 students win, and I lose. So I drive back while they held the trophies, you know. But, you know, interesting how philosophies are developed. Because on the way back, I'm thinking, well, how come I didn't win? What was it I did that made me lose? And so I started going through the fight in my mind. And I said, okay, I understand what I did wrong. And I said, okay, I may make a mistake again, but I'm not going to make the same mistake or the same loss again. And so philosophies are developed through this here. And as I tell my students, I said, the only time you ever lose at anything is when you don't learn from that experience. Because that's what life is. Life is full of experiences. And if you learn from them, you're going to grow. And so finally the LA Open came, Los Angeles Open, and I decided to compete in that. And I did, and I wound up winning the championship. And that was my goal. Then I thought, well, shoot, I won the LA Open. Wonder if I have a chance of winning the California State. So I decided to fight for the state title. And in 1965, I won the state title. Then I thought, well, shoot, if I can win the state, why not the national? So in 1966, I go to New York, I fight for the national championship, and I win it. Then I go, shoot, if I can win the national, why not the international, which is the biggest amateur tournament in the world? And so in 1967, I fight for the international championship, and I wind up winning the international grand title. So now I'm going to quit. I'm the #1 fighter in the country, and so now I'm going to concentrate on teaching. Well, the promoter of the international says, Chuck, if you win this 2 years in a row, you get your name inscribed in this big, huge silver bowl. And I go, I could get my name in that bowl. So anyway, I fight in 1968, and I win the grand championship again. So now I'm going to retire again. And then the promoter from New York, a guy named Aaron Banks, who promotes the professional martial art fights, called me up and said, would you like to fight for the world middleweight title? And so I'm thinking, so I do a lot of soul searching. Do I want to get into the professional arena? And finally, I decide to fight for the world title. So I got to fight in Madison Square Garden in 1968 for the world championship. And I fought a Puerto Rican kid by the name of Louis Delgado. And I wound up winning the world title, but not without a broken jaw. I got a broken jaw in the middle of it. It still bothers me to this day, you know, but I wound up winning the title. And then I held it for 6 years. And now at 34, I'm thinking, do I want to continue in the professional arena, or you know? And I want to quit winning. You know, so many pro athletes, they keep going beyond what is their prime, and especially boxers. And I said, maybe I don't want to do that. I like to win and quit winning. So I did. I retired. Then I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do? So anyway, I have 3 schools, very successful schools. A company comes to me, says, Chuck, would you like to sell your schools and let us open Chuck Norris schools all over the country, 1,000 Chuck Norris schools? Oh man, I'd like to have 1,000 Chuck Norris schools. So I said, so I sold my schools. 2 years later, we're bankrupt. I lost all my schools, lost everything, and now I have nothing. And I have a family at that time, so now I've got to make a living. So I'm going out and doing seminars all over the country, and I'm teaching private students. And Bob Barker was one of my students. If you saw him in Happy Gilmore, he was driving me crazy after that movie. And Steve McQueen became one of my students, Priscilla Presley. And but anyway, Steve says to me, you know, what are you going to do now? You don't have schools. Are you going to open up schools again or what? I said, Steve, to be honest, I don't really know what I'm going to do. He says, have you ever thought about being an actor? Well, I started laughing, you know. I said, Steve, I've never even done a high school play, much less anything even resembles acting. And I said, well, but I'm curious of why you would think I could even be an actor. And he said, I don't know. He says, you know, no one knows. Only the camera can tell. The camera's the one that will either make you look real or not. And he said, I don't know. There's something about you that I think you ought to give it a go, give it a try. And in a philosophy that I've developed all those years is that once I decide to do something, then by hook or crook, I'm going to finish it. And so I decided, I'm 34 years of age. I'm not a kid. And I thought about it for like 4 months. So I start checking around about acting in Hollywood because I know nothing about it. So I start checking. I find out there's 16,000 unemployed actors in Hollywood. The average income of an actor is $3,000 a year. And I'm thinking, holy mackerel. Now, these people are ones with experience, and I want to start trying to be an actor with no experience. But I thought about it, and I said, here's what I'd like to do if I decide to become an actor. It project a certain image on the screen, because there was a lack of heroes at that particular time, of heroes on the screen. Everything was basically anti-heroic type movies. And I said, I'd like to project a positive, heroic image using my martial arts, as the weapon against the bad guys. And so I said, maybe with that, because you have to have a reason. You got to have an understanding of why you can succeed at something. Because if you just say, I'm just going to succeed, it's not going to work because there's obstacles in the way to achieving anything worth achieving. There are going to be obstacles in your way. And so you have to have the determination and the persistence to overcome those obstacles and root whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And I knew that. I knew I was going to have obstacles. And so I had to have a plan and prepare it before I could prevail. So that was the reason. I said, okay, I'm going to try to create that image. So I thought, well, I'm going to go out and do calls. I'm going to go out and try for a part in a movie. And so I had one of my students who was an agent, kind of a wannabe agent. So anyway, he sets me up to go try out for a part in a movie. So I go down there. There's 100 guys there trying out for the same part. And a lot of them I recognize from television. I say, oh, I know him. I wonder if I can get his autograph. He's trying out for the same part I'm trying out for. I go, this is not going to work. So I went back home, and I'm talking to some of my black belts. I says, if I go out and try these parts, I'm never going to get anything because I have no experience. And I said, I got to come up with an idea for a movie. One of my black belts says, I have an idea. And he tells me this story. And he says, you'll call it Good Guys Wear Black. And I said, oh, really? So he and I sit down, and we write the story. And then I had one of my students who was, again, a wannabe writer, and he wrote the screenplay for me. Now, this is where your assertiveness has to come in. Now, I have to go out and start trying to pitch this screenplay in Hollywood. And with me starring in it, by the way. And so I would set up appointments with producers. And the only reason I got a chance to even see any producers in Hollywood because I was the world champion. And they wanted to see what a world champion looked like. And so I'd walk in there and I'd say, I have a script called Good Guys Wear Black, and I want to star in it. And they smiled, at me and give me about 2 minutes of their time and then usher me out. And this went on for almost 4 years. And so I had exhausted every producer that would see me in Hollywood. And now I'm at my wit's end. I said, well, I don't know what to do. And I don't want to give up. And it's funny how fate works. I'm at my best friend's machine shop in Gardena, California. I says, Larry, I've exhausted everybody. No one else, I can't get in to see anyone else. And he says, well, our accountant has a producer. Because he and I had the same accountant. I said, really? And he says, yeah, let's call him. I said, well, how old is he? He said, I think I met him. He's about 28. I said, oh, Larry, those are those wannabe producers. He said, well, let's call him anyway. He said, well, I'll call him. So he picks up the phone and he calls, and he gets the secretary. He says, my friend has a script I want your boss to read. She says, okay, well, send it in, and when he gets a chance, he says, oh, no. He says, I know how that works. I want him to meet my friend, and then he can read the script. She says, well, I don't think that's going to happen. And he says, well, ask him if he knows who Chuck Norris, the world karate champion, is. Well, he lived in the same neighborhood I did, and he happened to know who I was. So he agrees to have dinner. So we go out and have dinner at a Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles. And it's he and his wife and Larry and me and our spouses. And so I said, I'll pay for it. And so the bill comes. I don't have enough money. I says, Larry, do you have to go to the bathroom? And I'm giving that look, you know. He says, oh, okay. So we go in the bathroom. I said, Larry, I don't have enough money. Do you have any money on you? So he starts picking it. We have enough money plus $1. So I had to leave $1 tip that night. So anyway, we go back and we got so into it, I forgot about the screenplay. And he asked about it. I said, oh, here's the screenplay. When you get a chance, read it and see what you think. That's about midnight. We broke about midnight. So 4 o'clock in the morning, he calls me. He says, I like this screenplay. He says, I'm going to see if I can raise the money. So he'd already done 2 or 3 low-budget films. So anyway, he starts. His investors were in his area. There were doctors and lawyers and people, and they were the ones that would invest in his films from the local area. And he talked to them, and of course, none of them knew who I was. You know, they didn't know who Chuck Norris was. And they said, we're not going to gamble $1 million on somebody we don't even know about. And so Alan Bedell's his name. Alan calls me and says, I'm sorry, our investors won't put up the money. And just out of desperation, I said, well, can I talk to them? And he said, well, I'll try to set up for you to have a meeting with them. And so that next evening, he calls, he said, okay, you have a meeting the next morning with the investors. I'm thinking, what am I going to say? You know, what am I going to say to convince these guys to put up and gamble with me with $1 million? And so I go to sleep with that in my mind. About 2 o'clock in the morning, I come up with the answer. And it's funny how you plant those seeds in your mind and it starts working. And so anyway, that morning, I meet, there's 10 of them, and I say, I know you don't know who I am, but there's 4 million people in America who do. 4 million martial artists who know who I am. And all of them have seen me fight. But now that I've retired, the only way they can see me fight now is on the screen. And if we can get 4 million people in there, that's a $12 million gross on a $1 million investment. You're going to make yourself a lot of money. So they put up the $1 million. And now I'm amazed at myself, you know, because it's amazing what you can do out of desperation, isn't it? You know, and that's really what it was with me. It was desperation because this is my last shot. And so anyway, we do the movie, and Good Guys Wear Black, and there's not a studio in Hollywood that wants our movie. So here we got a movie, Good Guys Wear Black. No one wants it. So our producer, Alan, raises the money, borrows the money, and forms his own production company. So now I go on the trail with Good Guys Wear Black with 16 prints. And we're going to every little town, first in Texas, actually, El Paso, San Antonio. This is 1977. And so we're hitting all the smaller towns at that time in Texas. And then we expand out to other states. And I'm going, now I can't get national television. You know, I'm getting the local radio station. If I'm lucky, I get the local TV station. But I'm hitting mostly schools, high schools and middle schools. And that's how I'm promoting the movie. And so I'm on the road for 13 months with this movie. Well, this movie's making a lot of money. And in Good Guys Wear Black, I do a stunt where I do a flying sidekick, and I go through the front window of the car to take out the terrorist. And so that was the selling point of the whole movie. But, you know, it was amazing because the critics, you know, they viewed the movie. And he says, man, Chuck he better get back in his karate school because he is not an actor. And I said, well, I'm not trying to be Laurence Olivier. But anyway, but because the movie was doing so well, the producers called me up and said, would you do another film? So I called one of my students who's a writer, and he writes a movie called Force of One. He said, let's do a movie where you're a professional fighter. And I said, okay. So he writes Force of One, where I'm a world champion kickboxer. And so I go back, I film that movie, and then no one wants that one. So now I got to start the same thing all again. But now, Good Guys Wear Black is in Dallas, Houston, you know, in the bigger cities. So now I'm going to El Paso to do Force of One. I'm flying to Dallas to do Good Guys Wear Black. I'm flying to somewhere else to do, you know, Force of One, and then back. And as I land, I'm thinking, okay, what movie am I promoting here, you know? But through that extreme hard work and dedication and knowing that you can achieve, Good Guys Wear Black did $28 million. And Force of One did $32 million with a $1.5 million budget. And then I did the third one, which was Octagon. Everybody wants that one now. Every studio wants it. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is because of me pushing and striving to achieve and not giving up. And that's what I really emphasize with the kids today. Anything is possible in our country. Nothing is impossible. And I pray it will stay that way in our country. But nothing is impossible if you focus yourself, you plan, you prepare, pray, and then I think you can prevail. And that's what I have done over my lifespan. And from a kid coming up in poverty in Oklahoma to be able to receive the Drayton McLane Award tonight is something that I could never have dreamed of, that I would have accomplished at that time in my life. And it's been such a good run. And my wife has stood by me through this whole time. And through this here, you know, about 85, I started thinking, you know, I started thinking back when I taught martial arts for 15 years. And I'm thinking back to when I was teaching and working with young people. And I thought all the thousands of young kids that I was able to help with any insecurity problems that they all had, many of them had. And I thought, well, this is great, but these are kids whose parents had the money to bring them to my school and pay the tuition. You know, what about the millions of young kids in America whose parents have no money? How can they reap that reward? And I thought, well, shoot, why don't we just teach the martial arts in the public school system and use PE as a replacement and use the martial arts and replace a PE in the school. So that's my idea. And but because by this time I'm doing really well in the film world and all this stuff here. So I contact the Board of Education. And so I give them the whole idea. How about teaching the martial arts in the middle schools, because that's the most impressionable age of young people, mainly at-risk kids, from many of them from dysfunctional families. And I said, if we can reach these youngsters, we can get them on the right path of life. So many of them are going down the wrong path, and so many of them are gang members. You know, we can get them out of gangs because to be in our program, you have to break off all gang ties to be in our program. And then through raising their self-esteem and instilling that discipline, these kids can really become a productive part of society rather than a destructive part. And so I go through this whole thing with the board, and as I finish, they say, "Chuck, that will never happen in a public school." I go, "Okay." So I left. That was in 1985. So I'd forgotten all about it. And anyway, I was fortunate enough to have lunch with President Bush in the White House during his presidency. And he's the one who asked me, says, "Do you have any goals outside of your film world?" I said, well, as a matter of fact, I had an idea about teaching the martial arts in the public school system. And I started going through this whole spiel about the benefits that youngsters can achieve. I said, I'm a product of what martial arts can do for you. I mean, it turned my whole life around. It changed a young, insecure, non-athletic kid into a world champion and now an actor. And I said, so if it can do it for me, it can do it for anyone. And I said, so that's why I would like to get this program in the public school system and this and that. And he said, why haven't you done it? I said, I went before the Board of Education, and they nixed it. They said, no, that'll never happen. So I can still see him, maybe I can help you out there. He says, that is a great idea. And about that time, Mrs. Bush walked in. She says, what's a great idea? Because remember, when I'm telling him this, I'm kind of germinating the idea myself. I mean, I really didn't know what, really the plan was for this program. And I was just kind of putting it together as, well, when Mrs. Bush wanted to find out again, well, now I'm starting to get it together now. I'm starting to really get it fine-tuned. And so President Bush says, well, where do you want to start? I said, I don't know. He said, how about Houston? I said, fine with me. And so we opened our first school here in Houston with the support of Lloyd Ford. She was my first director here. Stand up, Lloyd. She's the one that helped me get Kickstart going all around the country. And so we opened the first school here, and it was very, very successful. I mean, the kids, at-risk kids, that means kids, really undisciplined kids, all of a sudden, I have to tell you one thing, is that I put it in a school, unbeknownst to me, that it was predominantly African-American school in Houston. And I put one of my instructors, Roy White, in the school. Blonde hair, blue-eyed kid. And so I go to L.A. I'm leaving for Israel to do a film. And about the day before I start to leave for Israel, I get a call from Roy. Mr. Norris, I don't know if this is going to work or not. These kids are the most unruly kids I've ever seen in my life. They've called me every name in the book, And I said, well, Roy, I'm leaving tomorrow for Israel. Can you hang in there till I get back? He says, well, how long is that going to be? And I said, about 4 months. He says, if I'm still alive, I'll still be here. So I come back 4 months later, and I fly to Houston, because I'm living in Los Angeles at that time. And I fly to Houston, I go to the school. The school is bob-wired in. Did you go with me, Bill, to that school? No? Yeah. But anyway, the school is bob-wired in. And I'm thinking, this looks like a prison to me. And so anyway, I go in, I meet the principal, and we're outside, and we start walking across the school ground to the gym where all the Kickstart students are. And as we're walking across, the kids in the classroom spot me, so they all run to the window, and they're yelling my name, and I'm waving back at them. And one of the kids said to the principals, Mr. So-and-so, my dad's going to kill you. And I go, holy mackerel. And so we get to the gym, and here's 150 kids standing at attention. And as I walk into the gym, they say, Mr. Norris, it's a pleasure to have you here, sir. And so I go in, they give a little demonstration for me, then I did a Q&A, and then they left, and I said, Roy, I said 4 months ago you were ready to throw in the towel. He said, it wasn't easy. He said, but every day I kept giving them positive affirmations, and they, along with the martial arts, and slowly but surely they started coming around. He said, but the turning point was when Jerome, that boy, he's like 6 foot tall. I said, oh yeah, Jerome's about 6'2", about 180 pound, 8th grader. And anyway, Jerome, in the middle of the class, Jerome says, Mr. White, can you and I spar? And so Roy berates him, says, you don't ever challenge an instructor in class, and blah, 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 and all that. And so anyway, after the class, Roy says, Jerome, would you stay behind? And so all the other students leave. And so Roy says, do you still want to spar? He says, yes, sir. He says, okay. So I tapped him on the head with kicks, and I showed him that I was in complete charge here. And then Jerome says, well, I'm a better wrestler, Mr. White. Oh, you want to wrestle now? So I got him in chokeholds and arm bars. And Jerome says, thank you, Mr. White. Thank you very much. He goes out there and he says, don't mess with Mr. White. But Mr. White's still there. But I have to tell you something. A few years ago, he had to have surgery in both of his hips. And so he's going to be laid up for 4 months in a wheelchair. And so we're going to put him on medical leave and all this stuff here. The students petitioned me, asking me if Mr. White could teach from his wheelchair. And so I talked to the instructors, and we talked about it. I said, well, let's give it a try. Sure enough, when Roy White would show up, the kids would run out there, open his door, get his wheelchair out, put him in the wheelchair, wheel him to his class, and he would teach from the wheelchair. Then they'd fight about who's going to take him to the cafeteria for lunch for 4 months. And so it shows, just how impactful a program like Kickstart is. And that's Gina, my mission in life today. Next to God and our family, Kickstart is our passion. And right now we're using Texas as a beacon state. We're going to show what a program like Kickstart can do to cut down gang violence, because these kids all have to be out of gangs to be in our program, school violence, and just criminal activity in general. We can see, I believe you'll see a huge decline if we can get this program saturated throughout the state of Texas, and that's what our goal is right now, trying to do. And but anyway, it's funny because when the critics, when I was doing my films, they said, Chuck Norris can't talk, but he sure can kick and punch. And so I thought, well, that's true. But today you're going to have to suffer with my verbal footwork. So I hope I didn't bore you too much. But thank you all very much. I would like to say one thing, though, because, over the years, Gina and I have been blessed to establish very special friends in our lives. And, and the thing is that President Bush and Mrs. Bush, you're at the top of the list of the people that we really think are very special in our lives. And we just want to thank you for the friendship that you've displayed over the years. Thank you, sir.
Chuck, congratulations once again on receipt of the award, and especially thank you for that inspirational message tonight. We have time for some questions, so please feel free to use the microphones, please, folks. If you could come out to the microphone, it would be a lot easier. Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yes, sir. Sir? Okay, yes, sir. Oh, yeah, you're fine, sir. I can hear you.
All right, we'll go with this young man. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I had a question. Mr. Norris, what was your favorite episode of Walker, Texas Ranger?
Well, interesting enough, you bring up Walker, Texas Ranger, is I wanted, about 3 years before we finished the series, Gina says, have you ever thought about doing a faith-based episode of Walker? And I said, no, I haven't. So I thought I'd like to do a faith-based episode of Walker. So I called the network up. I say, I'd like to do a faith-based episode of Walker. No, we got touched by an angel. That's enough religious stuff. I said, look, let me do one. And if it's not the highest-rated show, one of our highest-rated shows, I won't ask you again. And so they relent. So I do a movie episode called The Neighborhood. The Neighborhood's about a little African-American girl who lives in the ghetto right outside Dallas, and she's walking home from school, and she gets caught up in a gang war, and she's shot and critically injured, and taken to the hospital. So I go to the hospital, Walker, to investigate, and the doctor says she's not going to make it. She is bleeding internally, and there's nothing we can do. Then, miraculously, she's healed. And the doctors are flabbergasted. And she said, well, I was on my way to heaven, and an angel stopped me and said, it's not your time. Says, you have a job to do, and that's to clean up your neighborhood. So the rest of the movie, episode, is her going to the neighborhood, getting the graffiti down, getting the drug dealers chased out, and having a revival at the end where the two gangs came together. It was the first time Walker became a top 10 show. That's my favorite one.
Thank you.
Okay. Sir, do you have a question?
Mr. Norris, I don't know where to start, but I just wanted to say, first off, I've idolized you since as far back as I can remember, and I wanted to ask you, was this your first book that you made, or
yes, that was my first book. Yeah, The Secret of Inner Strength. Yeah, that was my first book.
Awesome book.
Oh, thank you very much.
I really enjoyed it, sir.
Thank you very much.
And also when I was younger, I had wrote a letter and sent it off to you. Well, I had sent it to someone, and I guess it went to like a fan site or something. I never received a response. And I was just
in those days, you had a hard time tracking me down. I was all over the map, you know, because I was working so hard filming that I was overseas and all that. I wasn't that focused on the fan club or anything like that, like I am now. Now, if you write me, you'll get an answer back.
I was just wondering, like, could someone write down an address that would actually go to you?
Yeah. I should go to chucknorris.com. chucknorris.com, and they'll answer you.
I mean, I know you got your ranch out by Anderson, but I mean, I figure if I leave a note there, I didn't know if it ever.
Well, just call. If you go to chucknorris.com, and we will answer you. I promise you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a
Thank you.
We have a question over there.
I will.
Okay. Question over here.
Mr. Norris?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for coming out. I read your autobiography, and it's a life changer. Incredible story.
Thank you.
In my career, I've had a chance to support two commanders-in-chief, George Bush Sr. for Desert Storm and George Bush Jr. for OIF-2. And in both venues, there would be a collection of young soldiers sitting around. In the first example, watching big screens inside a tent. And in OIF-2, more so with little compact plasma screens. And when I'd walk up to these soldiers, there was a 85 to 90% chance that they were watching you in one of your features. And you really got us all through a lot of hard times, and I was hoping I can get my picture taken with you.
Come on up here. But anyway, yeah, interesting. As a military man, I do anything for these guys. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You have a question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Norris, I just wanted to say, first off, congratulations. You look really great, by the way.
Thank you.
I wanted to know, you talked about your film Octagon. I was wondering, how do you feel about the recent boom in popularity with cage fighting, and how does that compare with your organization, the WFL?
Well, WCL is an organization where it's all stand-up fighting, the World Combat League. And it's all stand-up fighting rather than ground and pound. And the thing is, the fighters only have 3 minutes to try to knock the fighter out. So so I wanted a full throttle type action type of a combat sport. And that's why I formed the World Combat League. And if you got into it, you see what we do. It's all stand-up fighting. It's kind of like the fighting I did when I was a fighter.
Okay, and how does the cage fighting and the aggression in the UFC? How do you feel about that, the bloodiness?
Well, it's all right. I study all those. I've done jiu-jitsu for 22 years, and so I've studied all those. Probably, if I was starting over again, I'd probably be in there fighting myself. But the thing is, it's a sport, I think, for certain people, and it's not a sport for other people. And I just like to see a little more of the respect going on. Because when I meet them, they're very respectful. But I like to see them not put on that image of a bad guy image. But it's part of the sport. But a lot of people enjoy it. Thank you.
Let's go to this young man.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Norris, I too am a martial artist, so I understand all the kicks, flips, back flips. But I also understand the characteristics and mental discipline in martial arts, and I wanted to know if any of these principles inspired you to write this book. which I've now recently read a little.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it has. Especially my first books, they were inspiration. Black Belt Patriotism was more dealing on the political scene of the things that are going on in our country today. And after 8.5 years on Walker, Texas Ranger, all I read was screenplays for all those years. I started reading a lot about history and our founding fathers, and I just saw how we were drifting away from those principles and that vision our founding fathers had, so I decided to write about it. But the other books were more motivational books that deal with the achievements that the martial arts has given me. Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is running short, so we have 5 people. Let's take those last 5 questions, and okay, Chuck, and then we'll call it a night. Okay.
Hello, good to see you again, Mr. Norris.
Good seeing you
Especially
too.
with facial hair this time. I was wondering, it's a bit early, but do you have an opinion on the 2012 presidential race? Do you think
2012 presidential race?
Yes.
Yeah, Mike Huckabee.
Yeah.
In fact, my wife Jean and I are putting a big billboard across the street from our ranch. It says Mike Huckabee, President 2012. So you can drive by the ranch, you'll see a big billboard up there in the near future.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, that young man.
Mr. Norris?
Yes, sir.
I am a Kung Fu instructor back at my hometown and, believe it or not, a national champion. And I wanted to ask you what it was like working with Bruce Lee.
Okay. I was wondering, if that would come up with Bruce. Bruce Lee. How many of you know who Bruce Lee is? Oh, okay, good. All right, then I'll talk about it. Bruce has passed away. It's been 34 years ago. But Bruce, when I won the world title in New York, 1968, Bruce was doing the Green Hornet TV series, and he came there as a special guest. And so after I won the title, the promoter brought me over and introduced me to Bruce. And so Bruce and I started talking, and we were staying at the same hotel, so we decided to go back to the hotel together. And as we're walking to the hotel, which is only a couple blocks away, we're really getting to our philosophy and our techniques and all that. I'll never forget this. Anyway, we're going up the elevator. I was on the 7th floor, and he was on the 9th floor. We stop at the 7th floor, and I get out while he steps out. And the next thing you know, we're working out in the hallway of the hotel. This is at 12 o'clock at night. Next thing we look, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And he says, man, I got a 7 o'clock flight. I got to get out of here. He says, why don't we work out together in L.A.? And I said, great. So Bruce and I worked out for about 2 years before he left for Hong Kong to pursue his movie career. And I didn't hear from Bruce for like 2 years. And then out of the blue, he calls me. He says, Chuck, I've done 2 movies in Hong Kong, and they're hugely successful. And he said, I want to do a movie now with a fight scene everyone will remember. And I'm going to do it in the Colosseum in Rome, and like 2 gladiators, and I want you to be my opponent. So I kiddingly said, well, who wins, Bruce? He says, I win. I'm the star of this movie. And I said, oh, I see. You want to beat up the world champion, don't you? He says, no, I want to kill the world champion. So we wound up doing a movie called Return of the Dragon. And, and it was a very sad time when Bruce passed away at that very young age, because his career was really going, and he died of what they call a brain hemorrhage and an aneurysm, which in 1972, the technology couldn't find out what that was about, because Bruce came 4 days before he died to L.A. to get a physical, because he's passing out in Hong Kong. And we had lunch, and he said, I went and got a physical, and they couldn't find anything wrong, and says, you got the body of an 18-year-old. He's 32. So he went back to Hong Kong and wound up dying 4 days later. But anyway, he was an incredible guy and a good friend, and I still miss him to this day. Thank you.
One last thing, real quick. I would be absolutely honored if sometime after this presentation I could get an autograph and a picture.
Okay.
To show off to my Sherful.
Okay, sure, absolutely. Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Norris, I was curious if it's true that you sleep with a nightlight on, not because you're afraid of the dark, but because the dark's afraid of you.
Oh. That's these Chuck Norris facts. I don't know if you know anything about these Chuck Norris facts. I mean, it's about 3 years ago, this kid, a college kid starts sending me these Chuck Norris facts. You know, when Chuck Norris does push-ups, he doesn't push up, he pushes the earth down and all this kind of stuff here. And I'm looking at my wife, I said, Gina, these are pretty funny, you know. I said, but this only lasts a couple of weeks. And then the college kids gravitated, they grabbed to it, and now it starts circulating to all the universities and colleges throughout the whole country. Then it started going down to the high schools, to the middle schools, then it started going all over the world. I'd get a Chuck Norris fact from Africa. And finally, in fact, that's how I was able to get to Iraq in 2006 and 2007, is that the troops are bugging their commanders to get me over there because the Chuck Norris facts was going crazy in Iraq as well. And so, anyway, I wound up going over twice to visit Iraq, and I said, the only way I'll go to Iraq is if I can mingle with the troops and I can go to locations where most celebrities and the media don't go. If I can go there, then I would be glad to go. So I did. I wound up going down on the borders of Syria and Iran and all that, and I got the opportunity to shake hands and take pictures with over 37,000 troops, rather. And I have to tell you the funniest story, though, is the Marines. You know, I'd go there and they'd line them up and I'd take a picture and shake their hand and they'd move on. So a Marine walks up and says, the Chuck Norris fact is the round kick. That's the big thing in the facts thing. He walks up to me and says, round kick me in the head. I go, I'll do better than that. And I spun him around and I got him in a chokehold. And they took the picture and he walked off. Next Marine comes up, get me in a chokehold. Now I go, oh man, I've started it now. So now every Marine walks up and I'm getting him in a chokehold and they take the picture. Now one Marine, about the 30th Marine comes up, I get him a chokehold, the guy just has to change the camera. So I'm holding on to him, you know, waiting for the camera. All of a sudden I feel the weight drop, he's unconscious. And I go, oh my gosh, you know, and I'm down there trying to revive him. Now all of his comrades are taking pictures of him on the floor. And finally I get him back, you know, and he wobbles off and I said, no more chokeholds, that's it, no more chokeholds. But I tell you, it was so incredible because, you know, they're putting my name on the tanks and all this stuff here. It was such a great honor. And I go to the outdoor commodes, and here's Chuck Norris facts written all over them. But it was an incredible time, and it really is a great chance for me to reconnect with the young people in America, and that's probably the greatest gratification I have from the Chuck Norris facts, of being able to get reconnecting with the young people in America.
Okay. Let's go to this young lady here.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Norris, I was instant messaging my husband this morning, who is serving as an Air Force chaplain over in Kuwait right now. And he said, if you get to see Mr. Norris, would you please thank him on behalf of all of us men and women serving in uniform for all you do for our military members and families.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, give me my desk when you talk to her, will you? Thank you very much.
Last question.
Hey, Chuck Norris.
Hi. Yeah, go ahead. You can answer.
I've been your #1 fan.
Thank you.
I want to take a picture of you.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
You wait till it's over, okay?
Okay.
And I'll take a picture with you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Drayton, you couldn't have a harder question than what they asked me. Now, Drayton said, I have some real hard questions to ask you. I said, oh, boy. Thanks, Drayton.
Okay. Well, lady...
okay.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to conclude the program, but I don't want to fight you for it.
Yeah, Roman, go ahead.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our program tonight. I'd like to thank Chuck.